Thank you, Harut Sassoonian, whom I respect and appreciate as a great Armenian leader for many years, and a great humanist, and whom I cherish as a friend. With all the serious work that we do together, we have fun as two guys who enjoy each other. And Harut, that was quite an experience you put me through, let alone a tired audience, with that introductory biography. And it seems to me that if you would only add to that that you elect me as president either of the United States or of Israel, we'll get things done. Those who know me well know that I do all those things about genocide very much with my heart, in a serious way, and at the same time I manage all the way through to keep laughing as a living person and kibitzing. I have a problem. I have to be careful of the inappropriateness at times. We all have this integrative challenge to be alive and happy and to be deeply serious and deeply committed. This is a holy day for remembering the facts of the Armenian genocide without any denial. This is a day not only for remembering facts, but for experiencing, for honoring, commemorating the memories of victims, of families, of whole communities, of honoring Armenian culture, tradition, the Armenian nation. On the one hand, having feelings joining with the tragedy of what took place. On the other hand, not hesitating to experience anger. It's a healthy emotion when used correctly, and protesting the evil. Both of these sets of feelings need to be joined. The remembering and the honoring and the commemorating and the anger need to be joined with action. As so many of the speakers have eloquently stated, action on behalf of the Armenian people and Armenia, and that means full recognition of the Armenian genocide and fighting every form of denial. They keep creating new forms. We've heard references to the soft cell seduction campaign. I recently received a book from a Turkish association in which a new technique of denial is promoted. Believe it or not, page after page, they quote all of us who represent the scholarship and the advocacy of the recognition. Harut Sassoonian is on the list. The list goes for pages. I'm there. Vakin Dadrian is there. Richard Hovhannissian is there. If a man who's an academician with a PhD, a very dangerous degree, I add, if a man quotes all the right people who speak for the Armenian genocide, you have to trust him, right? It is pure garbage of denial in a new technique. We have to fight for a full acknowledgement and not only a recognition. An apology, for that is the way of modern nations in a modern world, for reparations, for redress, for legal actions that release funds that have been held by banks, by insurance companies, for legal actions that release and return lands, for legal actions that return religious sites, for legal actions that I do not know exist, our legal colleagues, but the whole point of it is progress and evolution, legal action to enforce open borders between fellow member United Nations states and free peoples. But now I'm going to move to another goal. And I beg you that you not be offended that I am not remaining only with the Armenian genocide. This is a tension I face with my Jewish people all the time. Were I to speak of the Holocaust, which of course I have the deepest feelings about, continuously and not mention other people's, then I would be a loyal Jew in the eyes of many of them. But when I dare to speak and think and write about other people's, I am straying. I invite you, I invite all of us human beings from all ethnicities, religions, nations to join together. This is a day in recognizing the Armenian genocide. In my belief, we are also joining with all the victims of all the genocides. And I'm going to go further. I mean by that not only the people who have been victims in all the genocides, I also mean, and this is a touchy topic in its own right, recognizing the co-victims in our various genocides. As a Jew, I am not so welcome if I recall the gypsies who also went to their deaths at Auschwitz. I am not so welcome if I recall the gays. I am not so welcome if I mention 1 million Russian POWs, many of whom died in the same gas chambers. I believe that memory of each genocide is memory of all genocides, and that memory of each genocide is memory of all the co-victims. And I go further to a problem that is one hell of a problem. I believe in our remembering and honoring the victims of genocides of peoples who have otherwise also been those who commit genocide, because this is a nutty world. And Harut, you said I'm a psychologist, and I'm going to try to address that in a moment. We are a nutty species. We are beautiful and we are terrible simultaneously, so that you have Kurds who very much participated as perpetrators in the Armenian genocide, as we well know. They are the victims of an ongoing genocide by the Turkish government. Our hearts need to be with the victims as well. We have Serbs, a nation that has just committed terrible genocide in the former Yugoslavia, but the same Serbian people really were the tragic victims of a terrible genocide along with the Jews in World War II. It is a deeply difficult task for our minds and hearts to learn to encompass the contradictions and stay centered on the principle, all human life is precious. No victim is more or less important than another. No genocide is more or less terrible than another. And as Harut mentioned, I have, in the last couple of years, beginning in Athens in one address, a second time in Yerevan, been proposing the creation of a new movement. Now, I am too old to organize and lead this process. I've done my share of projects. I continue to do some. This is another huge one. This one I call R2L, which is a new kind of acronym writing that has become popular in government and history. Right? The 2 stands for TO, to life. For those of you who are aware, it plays to some extent on a concept that has been introduced in recent years and that has made some headway in the international system. R2P, the right to protection of life, where some brave government leaders have proposed that the ancient concept of total respect for the sovereignty of a people stops when that people is committing genocide, and the international system or neighboring countries see that genocide is being committed and there is no machinery for controlling it in the country in which it is being perpetrated, that there is legal and moral justification for intervention in that country. Call the international police. Murder is going on. I describe it in a book that I published a few years ago called Fighting Suicide Bombings. I proposed as one technique a campaign for life. Let me give you a picture of part of that campaign. It's not a one-day affair, it's a many-year campaign, conducted internationally. It includes very much at the forefront our religious leaders from all of our peoples. Imagine our Armenian priests standing with imams, standing with rabbis, standing with other Christian clergymen, standing with clergymen from Oriental countries of different faiths, all together embracing one another in joint prayers and proclamations of the holiness of all human life in the name of all religions. Imagine the folk singers, the beautiful voices and the beautiful music, Armenian music and Jewish music, and French music and Greek music and all of the music of the world, the musicians standing together, playing together songs of respect for life. The time has come in civilization for a change of our minds, because we really are in trouble as a species. We do not sufficiently honor human life. That's what recognition of the Armenian genocide is also about. Now I'm going to take a little break and express my thanks to the United Armenian community for inviting me. I am delighted to be with you. I want to express my appreciation again to you today and the other days this week for your warmth and friendship towards me, despite my first name and my being also a citizen of Israel, a country that I criticize deeply for its failure to recognize the Armenian genocide and other evils. And a democratic country that I deeply love and am very proud to be a citizen of it, even as I am and continue to be an American-born citizen of the United States, a country that I deeply criticize for the president failing to recognize the Armenian genocide. And for other major errors that our American democracy also makes. Find me a government that does not do some evil things, seriously evil things, and a country that I also love. I am privileged to be a citizen of two great democracies that also do really lousy things. I also want to congratulate the Armenian people for what you and I, with pleasure, add to that what we have achieved in the last 30 years. We started almost at a zero level of recognition of the Armenian genocide. We started at a point where Armenians characteristically walked with their heads down, with shame, with a sense of the victimized, weak one. And your work, our work, your brilliance, your diligence, your creativity, your steadfastness, your love of Armenian tradition, your insistence on justice. We are so far ahead 30 years later, and you and we have reason to be proud. It's marvelous. And just to let you know what the score is in the ball game, a Turkish journalist writing in a newspaper in Istanbul wrote as follows: Armenians have been waging a battle. They have brainwashed the international community. This is the final match on the genocide allegations. We, the Turks, have lost all the previous games. He's dead right. Harut referred to my work, and my work is about genocide, and it's about the human mind. When I came to the decision that I would devote myself to the study of genocide, many years ago, I assigned myself two goals. One was to help create a field of genocide studies about all genocides, and the other was to participate in researches as a psychologist on the nature of the human mind. That's where my book, How Can We Commit the Unthinkable, has a subtitle, The Cancer of Human Experiencing, because I believe that the readiness to kill other human beings is a widespread epidemic of cancer in the human species. My book, Fascism and Democracy in the Human Mind, is about our minds not at the time of genocide, but in everyday life, and how we, me too, all of us, in many areas of our lives, make the mistakes of going to the kinds of thinking that deserve to be called fascist, because they do not admit truth, because they pursue a goal in a totalistic, aggressive kind of way. Genocide is a flaw, a sickness in human nature. It is hatred, it is prejudice, it is intolerance, it is discrimination, it is cruelty, it is sadism, it is murder of other human beings, however they are defined as others, on a racial basis, on the basis of their color, on the basis of their religious, on the basis of their ethnicity, on the basis of their national identity, on the basis of their political beliefs, on the basis of their sexual ways of life, on the basis of nonsense that somebody is wearing eyeglasses. That was a basis for killing by the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, because that suggested the person was retaining a mind. These are the processes that we have to fight in everyday life, as well as when they are brought together in the configurations within political and historical contexts that enable genocide to take place. Genocide is an entitlement of a people to superiority, to own others, to enslave others, to sacrifice others, to destroy others. Genocide is a culture of death against the culture of life. Some of the speakers were alluding to the fact that when we recognize the Armenian genocide and fight for justice, we are indeed participating in the fight of our generation against a culture of death. Listen to this and tell me whether it's 9/11 or 1915. A jihad appeal, kill them. A quote from the Quran, And I want to already emphasize that I am not Muslim bashing, I am terror bashing in any religion. And Islam has a huge burden to bear that has to be worked out. God will punish them in your hand and put them to shame, and you will overcome them. The manifesto continues, Islam is being torn down stone by stone. You have become slaves of the people of the cross. What year is this from? 1915? 2001? Can you tell the difference really, aside from listening to the fine-tuning of language? Behold, God has bestowed upon you a greater favor. Your enemies are trembling under your hand. Attack them from every side. Do you remember the papers that were found on the 9/11 bombers that Robert Woodward gave us in the Washington Post? Whenever you meet them, kill them. Quicken the failing proclamation of the unity by the fire of your rifles and cannon, and by the blows of your swords and knives. Cause the minarets and mountains to resound once more with the cry, Allah, Allah, Jihad, Jihad. And on it goes in a call to killing. Yes, this is 1915. Yes, this is 2012. For we, humanity, must, again, it's never been solved, fight those who call for superiority, uniqueness of their identity, the right to enslave others, the right to destroy others. Genocide is a cancer, and we need to find the cures for this cancer, which is an epidemic in human life. Now, I know that I cannot leave Los Angeles unless I say something about Israel's position about the Armenian genocide. I know perfectly well why I was invited to dinner here. If you think I have an easy time with it, I don't. But one part of me has a wonderfully easy time because I, without any difficulty, make the distinction between the Jewish people, the Israeli people, and the Israeli government. There is no doubt whatsoever that the Jewish people, the Israeli people, fully recognize the Armenian genocide and are fully committed to its recognition. I've met and I've heard a good number of quite lovely people whose profession is being politicians today. You guys have a tough profession. To remain human while representing, humanistic while representing a bad government position, wow, what a challenge. The Jewish people, through the centuries, have recognized the Armenian genocide. Here is a Jew who saw the genocide in Turkey, writing back to the Jewish community in the Yishuv in Palestine. And he writes, "For I as a Jew ask myself if I had the right to weep solely for the grief of my nation, and if Jeremiah did not shed his tears of blood for the Armenians too." Here is a statement by the current chief rabbi of Israel. And I'm going to criticize it a bit in a moment. But in its essence, he is speaking at the Armenian Genocide Memorial in Yerevan when he says, "It is impossible to remember without tears what has happened to Armenians in Turkey." I am more than glad that the chief rabbi of Israel was at the monument. I am more than glad for the statement, which is what I'm telling you the Jewish people say over and over again. What's my criticism? I didn't research it. I'm not sure whether he used the word genocide explicitly or not. I sure as heck would tell him to do so. What's happening on a political level? You know that the Knesset held its first substantial full hearing on recognition of the Armenian genocide a few months ago. The procedure in the Israeli Knesset is different than it is in our American legislature, where a committee recommends an issue to the legislative body, which then votes on it. In Israel, the issue first goes to the total Knesset. And this is not the first time, this is the third time, and in this case it was a unanimous vote by the Knesset to recognize the Armenian genocide. Did you know that? And then the full Knesset, by its vote, sends the measure to committee. What has happened the previous times is that it got to a committee where we didn't know what happened to it. And that was what we worried about this time. There was a choice between sending the measure to the Defense and Security Committee, where even your kids' names are hush-hush. You don't know what happens there. You don't even know if they hold a hearing, or to the Education Committee, which is a public hearing. It went to the Education Committee. That, for us, was a victory in our process. What I'm more than pleased to tell you is that 3-hour hearing, in which I participated as a witness but became totally caught up as a person present, took on an atmosphere of absolute holiness, of a wide, strong consensus of recognition of the Armenian genocide by professors, by representatives of the Armenian community who were honorably participating, by representatives of government. The Speaker of the Knesset, Reuven Rivlin, was not supposed to be there in terms of the role that he plays in the assignment to committees. He made a clear public statement that he was coming. He arrived in the morning and made the following statement: as human beings, the Speaker of the Knesset, Jews and Israelis, we are obligated and committed to recognize the Armenian genocide. Today's deliberation is not about a political issue, nor is it about Turkey. We are discussing a critical educational, spiritual, and ethical issue where Israel must neither deny the facts nor bend obsequiously. Recognizing the Armenian genocide will only be to the honor of the government of Israel, how true, and will also bring honor to Israel in the eyes of the government of Turkey, how true. Another distinguished politician who was there, who didn't have to be there in terms of his committee assignments, was the chairman of the predominant political party's caucus in the Knesset, the Likud party, Ze'ev Elkin, a longtime champion of recognition of the Armenian genocide, whom I admire and I love to hear him speak. He knows more about it than I do, and I've learned a few things. And Elkin said at the meeting, I have come to the meeting of the Education Committee purposely, even though I am not a member of the committee. However, and he made another gesture, I am sitting on the side of the audience and not with members of the Knesset at the head of the table, because I am ashamed of Israel's Knesset. The Berlin Wall of our violation of an ethical imperative has yet to fall. Nonetheless, something positive is happening today. I hope that finally our Knesset will reach a decision recognizing the Armenian genocide. Do you see what I mean? That the Jewish people and the Israeli people absolutely recognize the Armenian genocide. But realpolitik and the harsh and the dark side of politics do not go away so easily. I'm totally in this trance of a 3-hour experience, as I told you, that became a spiritual kind of experience. And suddenly, I hear the chairman of the committee stand up, bang his gavel, and say, "This session is over." I will not call for a vote. There will be another session in the future. We will advise you when. Obviously, the chairman of the committee is acting on the decision of the government, at the least to stall. To this day, with all the efforts I and others have made, we do not know from a reliable source what the next step will be. Will there be a next step or not? But I can tell you, had the vote been taken that day, it would have been overwhelmingly in favor of recognition. I want you to know how bad politics are. When the official protocol by the government of Israel was published for the hearings, I read it carefully, and it was good. They didn't distort things. They had the quotations right. But they also told who the various witnesses were. And the head of the Armenian community in Israel, Dr. Georgette Avakian, and yours truly were both identified as members of the Israel-Azerbaijan Friendship Committee. Yes, I have protested. No, I have not yet gotten an answer. Don't worry, these are the trivial parts of the whole process. I want to conclude, with your permission, on the note of the Armenian genocide being, for us, a critical focus, but within a context of our extended focus to all of humanity and all genocides. And the fights that we have to carry on while enjoying life and keeping a sense of humor are on behalf of all people. The job is endless. Erich Fromm said, if you begin your resistance to a Hitler only after he has won his victory, then you've lost before you've even begun. The former foreign minister of Armenia, whom I had the pleasure of meeting and very much enjoying, Vartan Oskanian, made the following statement on a day that was devoted to commemorating the liberation of the Nazi concentration camps. How beautifully he says this. After Auschwitz, we are all Jews. We are all gypsies. We are all unfit, deviant, and undesirable for someone somewhere. After Auschwitz, the conscience of man cannot remain the same. Man's inhumanity to men, to women, to children, and to the elderly is no longer a concept in search of a name, an image, a description. Auschwitz lends its aura to all the Auschwitzes of history and our collective history, both before and after. And I'm going to conclude with a statement by a man who was a Jewish inmate in Auschwitz, who became famous during the Eichmann trial. He fainted. He made a statement that became a byword, that Auschwitz was another planet, as he struggled to describe the unbearable cruelty of the concentration camp. We learned over the years that he continued personally to suffer terribly, and he sought treatment from many mental health professionals. He ended up going for treatment in Holland by a psychiatrist whom I met at a conference years ago in Tel Aviv, who has become famous for his handling of, his treating of victims of hostage situations. He's become a specialist in the treatment, the debriefing of people who've been shattered by major trauma. He took this man, whose pen name is how he is known, Katsetnik, that stands for concentration camp, and that's the name he adopted for himself. His real everyday name was Yechiel Dinur. And he treated him in what is, for those of us who are mental health professionals, an unorthodox way, but it makes sense in the hands of a responsible professional. He treated him, including with sessions of LSD, where this victim of Auschwitz, who's been tormented by Auschwitz all his life, came to a peacefulness in him connected with the following understanding, which he conveyed to us in Israel on Israel television. He now said, Auschwitz is not another planet. It is this world of ours. In Auschwitz, there was a dress rehearsal for nuclear destruction. You can substitute the word in the Armenian genocide for Auschwitz. We're talking about the same phenomenon. The finger that will press the button that can return this world to primordial matter is not the finger of God, but the finger of a human being. I, says Katsetnik, am the human being who created Auschwitz. He took responsibility, he, a victim, for the fact that all of us must work very hard to evolve the human species to a new level. Have I failed the Armenian genocide by speaking of other genocides? Have I failed the recognition, the holiness of the Armenian genocide by speaking of the future of civilization and the fact that hundreds of millions more will die in genocide, except as we all make progress? I feel not. I hope you agree with me. And I certainly, with deep pleasure and feeling, can conclude, God bless the Armenian people, God bless the Armenian nation. Thank you very much.